actually connected. You are now live. All right, there we go.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the November. Is it November? Yeah. November 2022 RentPrep AMA session. I'm Andrew Schultz, community manager here at RentPrep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker and property manager with like 14 years of experience in the rental industry. This guy right here is Stephen White. He's the CEO of RentPrep. He's been the CEO of RentPrep for
15.
Well, I've known you for I've known you almost the entire time I've been in the industry.
Yes. Yeah, and 15 years, and I've done the AMA so many times, and the podcast, and Andrew is like the guy that comes in and takes my job, basically. This is our first time ever.
You're welcome to come in anytime you want.
You're doing a better job. You're doing a better job than me, so listen.
I think there was one that you, me, and Eric did. Or maybe it was...
It was Ask a Property Manager.
Might have been an Ask a Property Manager, yeah. But I think this is the first AMA that we've been on together.
Yeah.
Normally it's either me and Carlos, or... Carlos and I, or just myself the last couple months. So it's been good. It's good to see you, first of all. I haven't seen you in a while because we haven't bumped into each other.
I know. I've been very busy with lots of stuff going on here, and obviously you're running your business, but...
Yep. Yeah, for those who aren't aware, like I work with RentPrep, but I also own my own property management company and real estate brokerage outside of here. So it's not like I'm in the RentPrep offices on a daily basis. I have my own operation, and then I'm in here for the AMAs and stuff like that. So, but it's been good. It's been good for everybody, I think.
I agree, and like I said, I feel like it's in good hands. Everything that I've done, and then handed over to you, you have improved upon, made better.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. Like you add a expert voice, so we have a lot of experience here at RentPrep because we're supporting landlords, we're supporting property managers. We see a lot of things. We we're sort of tuned in and plugged in. But when it comes to like boots on the ground, like a guy that's in the trenches doing this as a day-to-day job, that is the expertise. That's the expert voice that you bring. And so we appreciate that, and I have no delusion that I could come in and improve on what you have done. So I am here to support you. I'm going to read your questions, and basically be the moderator here, and pull out all of Andrew's expertise and knowledge that we can for the benefit of our community, and it should be interesting.
And I did have a chance to read through the questions again this morning. There's a few in there that you'll be able to drop some knowledge on as well.
All right.
And I think that's the nice thing about these is having a property management expert and having a tenant screening expert both in the same place at the same time means a lot of questions can be answered from different perspectives too, because I know that a lot of times when you and I talk about real estate related stuff, you'll approach it from a different perspective than I do, simply because we come from two similar but different worlds inside of real estate.
I agree. And Andrew and I have been doing this for a while and have done enough content together for me to also have enough self-awareness to know I'm going to have to keep moving here, because you and I will get stuck on something.
We're so bad.
We will go down rabbit holes and get deeper and deeper. So I'm going to be mindful of that and try to keep it moving.
Well, let's jump into our first one here, and we'll see how far we get. We've got, I think, 3 pages worth of questions. Thank you all for submitting questions, by the way. If you didn't get a question submitted for this one, you'll have an opportunity for the December AMA. I think we're doing one in December. That's going to be right around the holiday season.
Yeah.
So we'll have one in December. Usually about a week to 2 weeks beforehand, we post a topic in the RentPrep for Landlords Facebook group, so you can log in, click the button, submit your question, and you can make it completely anonymous if you want to, which is nice. And then that way you're not necessarily attached to the question, and we can still go about answering it for you in these AMA sessions. So we have some questions from people who have logged in and submitted questions. We also pulled some questions from the Facebook group, and let's go ahead and jump right in.
Awesome. So the first one is from Levi. Levi says, I am a small-time landlord just starting out. What tax forms do I need to make sure that I give my property owners?
So he's a landlord. Is he a property manager? It almost sounds like he's a property manager.
Yeah, I'm picking up on that too. And he says, tax forms need to give my property owners. So I would imagine...
I would think property manager then.
Yep.
So we have two different tax forms that we issue out at the end of the year, and actually we're coming up on tax time now. So I was just thinking about this recently. We have two different types of forms. They're basically both 1099 forms. There's a 1099 MISC form, which is what everything used to be reported on, whether it was rents or non-employment compensation in the form of contracting work or whatever the case may be. That's now two separate forms as of, I think last year was when that went into effect.
Mm-hmm.
You now have a 1099 MISC, which is what I would send to a property owner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically going to list out what their rents receipts were for the total year and things of that nature. And then there's the 1099 NEC, the non-employee compensation form. That's what, well, you'll be sending me one actually, or RentPrep will be sending me one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that would be what, like if I'm sending a contractor to do work and I pay them more than $600 in a calendar year, that's the form that I have to send to them.
Yes.
Both of those get combined with a 1096 transmittal form and sent to the IRS. Talk to your accountant for more information on this because they're going to give you a lot more information than what I can, especially in a short AMA session like this. But you can get all those forms for free on the IRS website. They'll actually ship them to you for free. We do it on a yearly basis. I haven't paid for a tax form in years, which is pretty nice.
That is nice.
I think there's a video on the RentPrep website on how to get the free tax forms. I think we recorded that last year.
Yes. And I will add, full transparency, Andrew is my property manager.
Right. I didn't want to. I didn't want to bring that up.
No, I have no problem with that. But probably the best decision I've ever made. And we talk about this sometimes. You know, it's been the topic of conversation on podcasts or maybe even AMAs. Like, you know, in the landlord journey, some landlords have to have some self-awareness to say, like, there's things that I do really well, there's things that I don't do well.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, like, for me, it's, I don't know if it's necessarily that I don't do it well, but I don't have the time as an entrepreneur and busy all the time. So that's really, you know, what motivated me to hire a property manager to manage my properties. But I would say even more so, what's super convenient is the way that everything is documented, and my taxes could not be easy over the past couple of years when it comes to that. Because not only does Andrew give me the proper IRS tax forms, but every year you give me that
the end of year statement.
The end of year statement.
Yeah.
And that ends up being something that I pass right on to my accountant,
Mm-hmm.
and that answers all questions. Matter of fact, I think it was last year the accountant had some questions, and it confused me because I was like, oh, that answer should be on the end of year statement. Found the answer, brought it up to the accountant, who then admitted, like, oh yeah, sorry, it was right there. But I was like, oh, at first I was like, oh, that's weird. Everything's usually, there's no questions. Everything's on there. So
right.
It's perfect. You know, they can pull out, what can be depreciated. They can pull out, the money that you're putting back into the property.
Mm-hmm.
I had, what year was it? 2020, where I had a string of bad luck.
I think it was 21 we did that half roof. Or was that at the end of 20?
I think it was the end of 20, because 20 also was the year that we painted a fence and then a tree fell on the fence.
I remember that.
And then we had to have the trees removed, the fence redone.
Those ash borer trees.
Yep.
Yeah. There were like
trees.
7 or 8 trees that we had to have taken down.
Yep. On top, the year or two prior, I had taken 30 something down.
Yeah.
So it was like, like a $25,000 or $30,000 bill in total for taking all those trees down over
That's
the
crazy.
years.
That's a lot on trees,
yeah.
and it's a big issue here in Western New York. The emerald ash borer is what it's called.
Yes.
I would assume they have it in other areas of the country too, but like when you wind up with an infestation, kind of like what Steve had at that property, unfortunately the bulk of the trees in that property were ash, and I think any ash tree that was there is gone now at this point. There might be a couple that are still standing dead, but
there's not. We removed them all because there were a lot of them that were still standing. There was widowmaker concerns, like big limbs just hanging, and some of them were pretty old and big. You know, it was devastating to lose them, but also very costly to take them down at the same time. But
the flip side is, what if the tree falls on, like you just said, you had widowmaker status on some of those tree limbs. What if one of those fell on a tenant's child or a tenant's car or the roof of the building or whatever the case? So it made sense at the time to take them down.
Yes,
it still sucked no matter how you slice it.
100%. But I will say, again, the end of the year statement that you send breaks everything down in a way where my accountant knows, okay, how how are we categorizing all of these expenses and breaking things up, and it's it's something I don't have to think about anymore, which is really
Which
nice.
is nice from a client perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I would add that for Levi, if you're a property manager, which we're sort of deducing
Based on what we're thinking here, yeah.
Right. I would say you will be a client favorite if you not only send out the required forms that Andrew mentioned, but also go the extra mile and send that additional end of year statement. It's huge.
Well, and we send a monthly, so you get a monthly statement every month around the 10th of the month, depending on whether the 10th falls on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. So you get a monthly statement, and then you get your end of year statement, which kind of recaps everything in January, which is nice. And we send the end of year statement right along with the 1099 form.
Yep.
So at that point, you're in a position where you can just take that, or even email it right to your accountant, and you don't even have to worry about it anymore. So
yeah,
that's the right way to do it, Levi. If you're looking to really impress your clients, that's the way to do it. Get your monthly statements out, and make sure your monthly statements go out on a monthly basis, and make sure they're consistent. I already have my calendar set up for next year. I know when every single one of my end of month statements is going out the door, and I've not yet missed a single end of month statement date in all the years that I've been doing this. Came close this year because I got COVID, but yeah, other than that, I mean, we've been very, very consistent. And that's honestly one of the things, I know we need to move on to another question, but that is one of the things that I can tell you, Levi, if you are opening a management company, that's something that owners consistently come to me and talk about, is the fact that they can't get consistent, accurate, detailed reports from their property managers as to what's going on. If you can nail those three things, consistent, accurate, and detailed, that's half the battle right there.
I agree. And
a lot of clients only look at, Steve, when was the last time you were at that property?
I mean, I drive by every 5 months maybe or something. Yeah.
Well, a lot of my clients, like, the only interaction I have with those clients is on a monthly basis. They get a report. A lot of them, we just send them the email on a monthly basis. They respond and say thanks or whatever, and otherwise it's hands off for our clients, and that's what they want in a lot of instances. So if that's the experience you're trying to offer, you need to make sure you're set up to offer that experience.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect. I gotta say. So another question from Levi. This was a two-part question.
Okay.
He said, if I have a tenant that's asking for extra stuff, what should I do? And he gives an example of what extra stuff means.
Okay.
So we put a brand new furnace and an AC unit into a property.
Okay.
We had an HVAC professional come in and clean it out.
Like clean the ducts?
Must have been clean the ducts out. Yep. The tenant's now asking for the units, the HVAC and the AC units, to be serviced every 6 months.
Okay.
Same tenant moved in, discovered a previously unknown mouse problem. We had an exterminator come and set traps. He is a property manager, because the way he words is, we had an exterminator come in and set traps, and the property owner decided to cover it at their expense, despite the lease stating that the tenant is responsible for pest control.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things to unpack.
There's a lot of things to unpack there.
So lastly, he says, if they renew at the end of the year, should we have a conversation with the tenant reminding them of their responsibilities of what
can I have the paper?
Yeah.
I'm going to need to reference this to make sure we cover all of this.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this too. The consistency, the establishing very clear,
this is law lease logic as far as I'm concerned. Like, what do you have to do by law? What does your lease say? And then what do you do logically? Like, this is law lease logic as far as I'm concerned. We should get T-shirts printed that say that.
I like that. Yeah, law lease logic.
Put a brand new furnace and AC into the property, had it professionally cleaned. So I don't know. There's not enough information here as to whether or not they had to replace the furnace because it was bad, or if it was just a unit upgrade. There's not enough info there. Same tenant moved in, discovered a previously unknown mouse problem. We had the exterminator come and set traps. Property owner decided to cover it at their expense. So if it's within like the first 30 days of a move-in, we always cover the extermination at our expense.
Yeah.
The one exception to that is bed bugs. If we have tenants come in and they report bed bugs within the first 30 days, we basically tell them that they probably brought the bed bugs themselves. Because
Yeah.
if there was a tenant that was living in the apartment that didn't have them,
Right.
the new tenant is suddenly reporting that they have them.
Yep.
More than likely, they brought the bed bugs in with them, or even picked them up from the U-Haul. Like
Yeah.
we've had people that have picked them up from U-Hauls. I don't know. You remember when I used to have all those college student rentals by
Yeah.
UB campus,
Yeah.
by South Campus? I've told the story multiple times about the couch from hell.
Yeah.
That we would see it on the curb and we would see somebody move it to their house, and then the next year it would go to someone else's house.
No.
This thing had probably if you put a blacklight on that thing, it would glow, I swear.
Yeah.
But realistically speaking, I know as a fact that that couch was swarming with bed bugs because every time I saw that couch, and it appeared in our apartment a couple of times, different apartments, every single time that apartment wound up with bed bugs.
Oh my God.
So used furniture is a big issue.
Yeah.
Even a U-Haul that wasn't sanitized between uses or something like that, that would be the case for us for bed bugs. But during that first 30 days, like it's possible. Like we just did a move-in recently that the apartment it's more out in the country, and it had been vacant for probably about 60 days before somebody moved in, and she moved in and 2 days later saw a mouse. So we sent the exterminators out, and we the owner's going to cover that at their expense.
Right.
But after that 30 days, like assuming we don't see anything more beyond that treatment, past that 30 days, it's on the tenant's responsibility according to our lease.
Right.
So there are some rules. I know New York State has rules on like infestations and things like that about landlord being responsible. So a lot of times you're going to be in a situation where even if it's a tenant responsible issue, like the tenant brought bed bugs in, you're probably going to have to mitigate it as a landlord and then back bill it to the tenant.
Yeah.
Which that can be kind of a sticky situation at times, but that's the way to handle it, at least here in the state of New York, if it really is on the tenant to handle whatever the infestation situation might be.
Right. As far as the HVAC servicing goes, again, like that's something that would either be in the lease, but there is no. It's not a safety issue to not have it serviced.
It can be like if
every 6 months.
there's an issue with the unit that, like, say the heat exchangers cracked on a furnace. In theory, if it's a newer furnace, the furnace should be able to detect that it's not running properly and shut itself down.
Right.
But realistically speaking, I know as a client, we do service our furnaces at least once a year.
Right.
They always get serviced before we go into the winter months.
Right.
And we always do the smoke and CO detectors at the same time to make sure we're compliant, make sure everything has batteries and things of that nature. And the reason we do that is because we have caught furnaces that are not where they need to be functionally.
Right.
Like we found one that had a bad heat exchanger in it, and because we went in and put the carbon monoxide alarms in, the carbon monoxide alarms tipped the tenant off, and they called us. So that was, nice. That's happened. I can think of at least 3 separate occasions now where, because we've done those services, we have saved tenants from literally dying from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Saved their lives. That's crazy to think
and
about.
it's a non-negotiable. I mean, obviously, you've never argued that charge.
No.
I did have one property owner who wanted to argue with me about it, and I didn't take his business. I'm like, listen, if you're not willing to do the bare minimum health and safety that I'm requiring you to do, I'm not willing to work with you.
Yeah, I would imagine it's easier to pay that bill than deal with a tenant death on your conscience or legally. So,
it's worth it. I mean, it's not like it's a huge sum of money to have a furnace serviced on a yearly basis. We do ours once a year. We have the furnaces serviced once a year, and then we also go in at least once every 6 months to do a unit inspection, and that's when we hit the smoke and CO detectors the other time. So, honestly, it's not a bad idea. Thinking about this, through and through, talking about servicing the furnace, you could probably have a professional come in and clean and check it once a year and change the filter. It's probably not a bad idea to use that as an excuse to go in at least once a year to see the unit as well.
Yes.
I know, again, we do our unit inspections biannually, twice a year.
Yep.
But it's...
that's something that I talk about all the time. I'm a huge advocate for that because it's a lot easier to course correct an issue when you spot it 6 months versus 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's...
And that could be anything from a leaking faucet that's causing an issue under the sink that you didn't know about, like a bad drain line, to a tenant that's got hoarding going on that you weren't aware of, to, other health and safety concerns. Some tenants just don't report maintenance.
Yeah.
We've walked into units before where there's mold. And I'm like, why wouldn't you call us and tell us that you've got a mold situation? We'd come out and deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to bother you, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Like, no, bother me.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. Like, we want to make sure that you have a safe and healthy place to live,
Right.
ultimately. So,
Yeah. All right.
I think we got everything on
I
that.
think we did too. So basically,
We're 20 minutes in and we've got 2 questions down. We're doing great.
I knew this would happen.
Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
We're getting good answers out though.
That's true. So yeah, I think I think Andrew makes a good point there, which is basically if it's the letter of the lease, right? That's usually what you're going by, unless it's some extreme situation,
Right.
And then logic,
Yeah.
right? Like
Law of
safety,
least logic.
yeah. Like I love that.
So much of landlording really does boil down to those 3 words, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been pushing. We've been talking about it more in the podcast and in the videos that we've been doing and stuff. Law, lease, and logic, in that order, solves 90% of your questions as a landlord.
Yep. All right. Next question we got is from Kaiser.
Okay.
How do you deal with a new tenant who moved in and you smell marijuana in your rental property? I live in a state where marijuana is legal by the government. What can you do in this situation?
So we're legal in New York.
Yeah.
Is it recreationally legal here?
I believe so.
I think so. I think we're full legal now.
Yeah, because I know we had to change our employment policies.
Really?
Yeah, the credit bureaus require drug testing to be able to look at people's background checks and credit reports, things like that. And then when New York legalized, they changed the policy to basically it's a lot like DOT.
Yeah.
It's like if there's suspicion of use, then you can do a required drug test based on the suspicion of use. But yet no longer can you make that or at least we can't make that a determining like hiring factor or randomly drug test. And it's a fireable offense if somebody pops positive on a random drug test. They have to basically
like be under the influence in the office kind of a thing.
Yep, be on the job under the influence, then you can take action. But they completely stripped those laws, at least on the employment side, down. And I'm curious what your answer is going to be on this from a property perspective. I know what my answer is. What does a landlord do in that situation?
It's two-pronged. I'll tell you right now, my primary approach is I don't care if somebody's smoking pot. I really don't. If I didn't rent to tenants that didn't smoke pot, I would never have tenants in any of my buildings, if I'm being completely honest with the situation.
Right.
Like, that's just the way it is. That's a fact of life. Welcome to New York in 2022.
Yeah.
That said, we do have a strict no smoking policy in our buildings. We just ask them to go outside.
Yeah.
Just step outside.
Yep.
That's all we care about.
That was my answer too. I was just going to say, smoking cigarettes is not illegal.
Right.
Like, but a landlord can enforce a no smoking policy.
Right.
And I would even add to that.
We have vaping on ours too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No smoking or vaping inside the home.
That I've not seen on an addendum yet.
Well, and good luck. I mean, it's not like vaping for the most part leaves like a residue on the walls or anything like that. It's pretty much you're not going to catch somebody vaping unless you literally see them blowing a cloud out of their mouth inside the unit for the most part.
Right.
So it's one of those things that it's in the lease, but it's also one of those things that am I ever going to evict somebody for vaping in their apartment?
Right.
Like it's one of those situations.
Right.
We ask people to step outside to smoke and to vape and stuff like that. Some tenants will do it, some tenants won't.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
And I would say, based on our experience here, and I remember Eric, formerly at RentPrep, actually ran into this issue with his own rental, and he was owner occupied. So
I was going to say he lived there at the time too, right?
Yeah, this became a real issue where he specified in the lease that you can't smoke in the property; they had to be outside the property, but he failed to specify what they would do with the butts.
Yeah.
And so these butts were everywhere.
Yeah.
It became a real issue. And then he, of course, gets the coffee can, asking politely, can you throw the butts in the coffee can? And almost like intentionally disrespectful, they didn't. And, and so I would say make sure you add that in the addendum to your lease if you have no smoking. Be clear, if you do smoke outside, it's got to be contained in some sort of receptacle when you're done. You can't just throw the butts all over the place.
Did you know that we lost a house that way?
No.
Probably
To a house fire?
yeah, to a house fire.
Oh, wow.
It was back when I was managing those student rentals. It was one of our student rentals by UB South
Wow.
campus. We had it was kids on the front porch, upstairs balcony.
Mm-hmm.
He went to throw his butt in the they had like a metal coffee can,
Yeah.
like a Wilson Farms can, Maxwell House can,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he went to throw the butt in the can and missed and didn't realize it and went inside, and the can was sitting on the decking of the porch,
Oh, no.
like a little carpet
Yeah.
was sitting there, and the butt lit the carpet on fire and lit the front of the house on fire, and there was so much damage we ended up having to have that house demolished, emergency
Wow.
demo.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely this is something that you should take seriously. But as far as getting a tenant to, to smoke outside, I would say tell them, yes, you can smoke outside. Please dispose of your butts respectfully, put that in your lease.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like people smoking inside, you can issue a lease violation if you find that they are smoking inside. You're probably going to have to prove it if you are looking to use that as a basis for an eviction. So now you're talking about doing a unit inspection and looking for ashtrays with cigarette butts in it, or looking for obvious signs that you can take pictures of, because you can't capture a smell and take it to the courthouse.
Right.
So that's the main thing is if you do have somebody that is in the unit and they are smoking, whether it be cigarettes or pot or whatever meth, ask them to take their meth outside, I guess.
Right. All right. Next question. We're not going to be able to give a direct answer, but I think we're both probably going to have a similar answer and at least point Jennifer here in the right direction. So Jennifer's asking a two-part question. The first part is there an association that I can join for landlords in Richmond, Virginia?
Oh, okay.
Now, I have no idea.
Okay.
However, I do know that there is a large network of REIAs, so real estate investor associations. I got to imagine, I'm positive that there's something in Richmond, Virginia for REIAs.
There's got to be a RIA. Were they looking specifically for like a trade group?
Well, I would say it probably. Okay, so this was my second thing, was a landlord association. These might actually be a bit more rare than RIAs, right? Like in Western New York, Buffalo has notoriously failed to launch a successful landlord association. However, Niagara Falls has one.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. I've spoken at their association a handful of times. It's what you would think.
What you would expect.
It's what you would expect. Nothing crazy. They meet at a restaurant, once a month, pretty routine. They actually get involved in a little bit of lobbying local government, stuff like that for landlord, try to balance out landlord-tenant laws. But yeah, based on our local experience, I would say you might have a better chance looking for a RIA than a landlord association that may not be in that area.
I might agree with that. I would say local RIA meetups are always good. I know actually you were scheduled to speak at the one locally here.
Yes.
2 weeks ago.
Got hit with a snowstorm.
Got hit with the snowstorm.
Yeah.
Dude, I had 4 foot of snow at my house.
Yeah, I had 6 feet. So, yeah.
All right,
I get it. Yeah, it was brutal.
It was a rough one.
Yeah. There's no shoveling that you can do to fix 4 or 6 feet of snow.
No, you can't. And my plow guy didn't come for days. It was a mess. We'll post pictures in the Rent Prep group if you guys are interested. But
I got plenty.
It was a lot of snow. Yeah. A lot of snow.
But I typically speak. It's been like once a year at the local one. But I've done speaking engagements at one in a huge one in Ohio. I think they're the largest in the world, matter of fact.
Wow.
Or the country. Detroit, St. Louis, they're all over the place, and sometimes they're part of a larger network. I think the one in Ohio, I want to say it's Greater Cincinnati or something like that, and I think they have the largest membership in the country.
We used to have great Bigger Pockets meetups here locally. If you're looking, Bigger Pockets, I think, still maintains a list of active meetups across the country and stuff like that as well.
Yep.
That's how you and I met originally.
Yes.
I don't think it was a Bigger Pockets meetup technically, but it became a Bigger Pockets meetup, and then it eventually fell apart after like less than a year.
I don't think it was sanctioned on Bigger Pockets, but we all met each other.
We all met each other through Bigger Pockets. I think it was
Michael Sherwood.
Right? It was Sherwood, yeah.
Yep.
They basically just posted that they wanted to do a meetup, and we all met at a restaurant, and I want to say that lasted for like 6 months or so before it kind of fell apart, but. Yeah, I mean, there's always bigger pockets meetups, and honestly, there's always forums like the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group. If you
Yeah.
pop on there and say, "Hey, I live in this area. Are there any other landlords in this area that would be interested in getting together?"
Yep.
Bigger pockets, same thing. They have
Yep.
a huge forum there that you can tie into. But
I'd say that's what's great about the rent prep community at this point is it's scaled to a size where you can be geographically specific and
yeah,
find people in your area. When we first started out, that was kind of an issue.
well, I mean, are we at 14,000 yet?
Yeah, yeah,
So we're at 14,000 members now. So you
yeah.
got to figure that's across 50 states and across the globe.
Yep.
You're more than likely going to find somebody within, let's say, within 50 miles of you. I
Yep.
mean, even if it's just somebody else that's local that you can use to bounce ideas off of,
Yep.
bounce back best practices off of. I mean, that's one of the most valuable things that I always used to get out of
Yeah.
the landlord meetups was, hey, how are you guys processing your applications or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
I know that there's 3 other property management company owners here in Western New York that we sit down at least once a quarter and meet.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we compare. You got to be careful with what you're doing because obviously there's laws on like blacklisting tenants and obviously there's a ton of antitrust laws.
Right.
But if you're having general discussions on I'm doing this as a policy but it's not working, what are you guys doing? That's all stuff that's in the clear.
Yeah, you're sharing knowledge. I love that.
Yeah, and it's good because it keeps us in each other's minds. And look, it's a small group. There's 4 of us, and it's only managers that I myself would put my properties with.
Right. Right.
And by keeping it smaller, by keeping it a group of real true industry professionals, as you know, there's a lot of fly-by-nights in Western New York, or really in New York State, that have taken money and stuff like that. And it's better to keep it when you know that you have a good group. It's better to stay with that good group.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, my recommendation would be check out. Obviously, you're in the Rent Prep community. Post something in there. Check it out. Look up REIAs in your area, and then Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
So any one of those.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then actually, I should probably plug NARPM there real quick too, right?
Oh yeah.
If you are in the industry, if you have, I don't think that they have a certain number of doors. They just require you to be a professional property manager.
Yeah.
Or if you're a licensed broker or something like that, National Association of Residential Property Managers, NARPM. I'm a member of that as well as our local board of realtors and stuff like that. It's completely separate from NAR and the National Association of Realtors. There's no connection between the two.
Yes.
But that's a really good group. They offer a lot of excellent industry training, some great conferences, some excellent speakers.
Yes.
I've met a lot of really, really great people through the NARPM events that you and I have been to, and some of the events that I've gone to separate.
I was just going to say
The networking opportunities are excellent.
Yes, they are. They really are. You really are. You got to be careful who you drink a lot around. But not every state does it well either.
No. Florida's is great. New York's is non-existent.
Right.
I'm actually a member. My office is in New York. All of my operations are here centered around Buffalo. But I'm actually a member of the Florida NARPM chapter because Kim sent me up.
Kim Hampton.
Yeah.
She's great. Yeah, if you're in Florida, you're a property manager, look up Florida NARPM. Kim Hampton is the president still, I believe.
I have no idea. I'm pretty disconnected from that part of it.
I think she is.
She might be.
But she's great.
She's also a sweetheart. She's just a
really
down-to-earth
is.
person. Her and her husband both are great.
Yep, and it's a really, really good organization, really well organized, and looking out for their members. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so Jennifer, second part question. Can I ask for any credit score, like as a minimum? She says, I'm asking for 720. I heard that they're giving everyone an automatic credit score of 620, even if you don't have that score.
I feel like this is a question that you're going to be able to touch on a little bit more than I can, because you know the ins and outs of the credit world a little stronger than I do.
So it's not official here, but it's coming. The 620 minimum?
Seriously?
This will only make qualifications higher, don't you think? Okay, so a couple of things. I just got back from a conference in Florida for National Association of Credit Reporting Agencies. So TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, everybody was there. The big talk this year is the buy now, pay later. If you're old school like us, probably you know it more as layaway.
Layaway.
Yeah,
I just mentioned that to Denise the other night.
Yeah. So the big announcement is the BNPL, buy now, pay later, and if I can remember correctly, the exact rules was basically if you're financing for less than 5 months, it has no impact on your credit. If it's 5 months or more of like buy now, pay later, and you're making payments for more than 5 months, then it is actually going to show as, it used to show as an installment loan. Now it's going to show specifically labeled as a BNPL, buy now, pay later.
So what differentiates a BNPL from an auto loan, from a mortgage, from any other installment loan? An Amex card, really, because I think Amex is considered installment.
Yeah, I think it really matters how you categorize them when it comes to the inquiries. So the way that credit bureaus operate, or credit scoring works, is too many inquiries can lower your score.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. However, it's more specifically, it's too many inquiries in one category that signals what they call fishing for credit. So if I go to the mall and I try to get a Macy's card and an Old Navy card and a Gap card and a J.C. Penney's card, that is for sure going to have a negative impact on my credit score. It's looking like I'm fishing for credit. I got denied at Macy's, so now I'm going to Old Navy. Now I'm going to this place. But theoretically, same day, I go to Macy's and I apply for a credit card. Then I leave there and go to a car dealership and apply for an auto loan.
Right.
Then I apply for a rental property, and they pull my credit. Those are three different
categories.
Yes,
yeah.
That has no impact on your score. The reason it negatively impacts your score is because of the category. So the buy now, pay later, I could see that being the same concept there.
So I got to press pause on that because I have a totally separate question. If I walk into an auto dealership, and you know how it is, you fill out the application, you give them your social, and they send it out to their system.
Yes.
That's like, you look at your credit report the next day, that's like 7 different inquiries in one day. Like, is that tanking your credit when they do that? Or is it because it's all in such a short time frame? It
can tank your credit. Now, there's a lot more soft hit options out there. Tenant screening being one of them. We now do all soft hits.
Yeah.
So no more hard inquiries on credit report, which means it's not going to show up on a credit report if we look it up. But if you pull your own credit report, you will see the inquiries on there. That's the difference between a hard inquiry and a soft inquiry.
So if I run a credit report through RentPrep, and then Kristen, my old office manager, say she runs one at her new company.
Yes.
We wouldn't see each other's reports, but if the tenant ran their report, they would see that I ran and Kristen ran.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So if this was 5 years ago, I would say if you saw 7 inquiries on your credit report, those were 7 hard inquiries that was for sure impacting your credit, even for a short period of time. But now, with so many financial institutions and all the apps that you see, especially for auto financing, they're all pitching soft pull. So it's not going to have the same impact that it once did.
Gotcha.
Every credit report has what they call scoring factor codes, and so you can check your codes to see if too many inquiries is impacting your score.
Yeah, that usually shows up right at the top of the reports when we look at them.
It's in the summary. So, okay. So that was a long way around to say.
What was the original?
To say, the change coming because of that shift. They estimate an increase in credit scores of 6 million people. Now, if you think that's a lot, not.
It's not, because we have 700 million in the United States, I think, right?
In 2018, the credit bureaus, on rare occasion, credit bureaus do this, where they all get together and they make these
big changes,
wholesale changes. Yeah, these big decisions like the buy now, pay later. Well, 4 or 5 years ago, they did the same thing with judgments and liens being reported on credit reports.
Right.
They decided the courts couldn't keep it consistent, so the best move was to just eliminate it.
Right.
Now that, if you go back and listen to our old podcasts, and I was on episodes pontificating the second coming of another financial collapse, because overnight over 70 million people saw on average an 8% increase in their credit score.
That's 10% of the country.
Yeah, and it's a false increase, right?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't deserve to have an increase. You just got lucky and had a derogatory or an adverse file or reporting fall off, and it didn't hurt you anymore. That's dangerous.
Well, it is dangerous, and I know you and I talked about this back maybe a year or so ago when all the changes went through for medical collections.
Yeah.
And basically, it wiped out an entire industry's ability to collect on debt.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent, I understand that you can really get into some nasty medical debt very, very quickly in this country. But good, bad, or indifferent, what they did with those changes was, at least in my eyes, basically told an entire industry, the medical industry, it's going to become incredibly difficult for you to recapture debt once it's been incurred.
Yep.
And we don't care
Yep.
because this is what we've decided is what's right for your industry. The credit bureaus, and above them probably banks and financial institutions, are kind of dictating industry changes.
Yeah.
And I look at it, and at first I looked at it and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of people out there with bad medical debt that they're never going to repay and they're never going to get ahead because of it. And then I thought about it and I'm like, but they just came for the medical industry. How long before they come for my industry?
Yeah. Well,
and it's not an unreal thought to have, because you know as well as I do that we just went through the HSTPA legislation here in New York State in 2019, which, if you're outside of our state, that was a major overhaul to the landlord-tenant law. That was basically, it was 75 pages of legislation that was proposed on, I want to say, like a Wednesday and passed on a Friday, and was most of it was in effect the second it was signed.
Yep.
So, like, I had to spend an entire weekend reading through 75 pages of legislation and figuring out how to open the doors on my business Monday morning.
Yeah.
So when I look at things like an entire industry's debt being removed from credit reports, listen, landlords are always a target.
Well, I was just going to make the comparison. If you don't think as a landlord you have anything in common with the medical industry, here's what you do have in common. The two worst collection rates. And I came from the collection industry.
That's right, you did.
So my credit experience comes from that side of the business. The two worst collection rates for our industry. Number one, property management landlords. Number two, dentists. Nobody pays their dentists. Yeah. Think about it. Like, if you're a landlord and you've ever had to deal with this, you know probably really, really well. You evict somebody, you get a judgment against them. That's not even half the battle. Executing that judgment, collecting on that judgment, that's a whole different story.
Well, and we tell most of our clients not to bother.
Yeah.
It's not worth the money that you're going to spend going to small claim, because you got to send an attorney. You're going to have to go to court, get an attorney, blah, 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 blah. At the end of it, you get a shiny piece of paper. You might as well frame it and hang it on your wall, because you're probably never collecting that money.
Yeah. And now that doesn't even impact their credit reports, I mean, the only chance that you're collecting on that is if they go to try and buy a house. But do the math. They're probably not going to try to buy a house over the next 7 years, and so you're just out. So So Jennifer, I have never heard of an automatic credit score of 620.
I've never seen it either, because whenever I run a report, I always just get non-sufficient information to score it, so it just comes up NA.
And I can also confirm. So we know this as what we call thin file, and one of the reasons the bureaus at this conference that I went to. It's such a ridiculous reason, but one of the reasons they were championing creating this new category of buy now, pay later was they said, well, it could create credit for thin file, the thin file demographic, people who don't have a lot of trade line that's going to build credit, but it'll help build through their thin file. So thin file will still exist. 620 is not low enough to be some sort of new low.
So why don't you give because the credit ranges from like 5 something to like 850?
380 to 850.
Okay.
If you get a credit score,
I think the lowest I've ever seen was in the low 500s. And
I've seen some 390s.
That's insane.
You got to work for that.
Well, you have to and that's what I tell people. Like, if you have a credit score under 600 is my threshold for my tenant screening criteria.
Yeah.
If you have a credit score and it's sub 600, you're actively avoiding paying bills. It's not like something happened and something went 30 days late. You're actively not paying your bills at that point. You've never met a bill that you've wanted to pay, or whatever the case may be, when you get into a sub 600 credit score. And that's why we use 600 as our cutoff point.
And I've said this for years. credit is earned.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Good credit's earned, bad credit's earned.
Yeah.
You don't wake up when you're 18 and they go, okay, you're going to get a credit score. We're going to give you 620 to start with.
Right.
You have to start earning and building credit. That's why I always say insufficient credit is a lot less of a red flag and certainly worth a conversation versus bad credit. Insufficient credit may not be a bad thing.
Well, and whenever we get somebody that has insufficient credit, I would rather see somebody with insufficient credit than bad credit. Because that means that they just haven't built credit, they haven't abused the credit that they had.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's we don't mind insufficient credit at all.
It's always a great conversation starter. Hey, you don't have any credit, what's going on? You find out maybe they're younger and they just haven't started yet. And then on the flip side, I've seen a lot of cases where, you got adults who could or would likely have built credit, except they live in this cash world of like, listen, I don't want to have any debts. I pay everything in cash. What landlord wouldn't want that?
My girlfriend's father was like that.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew how to work a debit card, man. Like everything was cash basis, and that's how he liked to live his life. And all the more power to him because it worked out very, very well.
Yes.
But that's just how some people are. Some people don't want to have credit. Some people, you've got Dave Ramsey's, and you've got I'm trying to think of somebody who's ultra leveraged, Grant Cardone's, and you've got everything in between. And it really just depends on how someone chooses to run their personal finances as to whether or not they're going to have that credit.
I agree. And I would say, to your point, so Andrew's minimum score is 600.
Yeah.
Now, the property should dictate the criteria to some degree, right? So if you're in an area, and I'm just using general numbers here because obviously our community stretches across the country. So no matter where you are, this statement should hold true. If you have a property that's in a very nice neighborhood and it's $2,000 a month, and then you have another property that's, maybe not as nice, doesn't have all the updates or whatever, neighborhood's not getting great scores. Your criteria for that, and let's say you're charging $1,000 in rent, so two very different properties. It's okay to ask for two different minimum credit scores.
Right,
and
absolutely.
set it based on the property.
Well, and it's okay to have different selection criteria for different properties. I personally don't. We run one selection criteria because that makes my life easier.
Yes.
And we've yet to find an issue with it.
Yes.
But yeah, you can have multiple criteria for different properties as long as everything is fair housing compliant.
Yep.
And my second recommendation is to always have it in writing and always, always, always follow what you have in writing. Don't set a policy and then ignore a policy because that's a surefire way to wind yourself up with maybe not necessarily a fair housing issue or whatever, but if you say someone accuses you of discrimination and they go the whole boat and they take you to court and they find out that you have a policy, but you deviated from your policy, that's going to become a point of contention. And they're going to ask you, why did you deviate and what caused it and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Have a consistent set of fair housing compliant screening criteria and follow them every single time.
Yes, great advice. And I would say 720 is pretty high.
720 is very high. What's the average credit score in the country?
So for a renter, it's around 650. For a homeowner, it's around that 720 mark. So you're looking for homeowner level credit, which means not that we're breaking people down into different classes, but homeowners have the strength of a mortgage on their trade line, which is valued pretty high.
It's valued much higher than a tenant's not going to have a mortgage. More than likely is not going to have a mortgage. They're going to have more auto loans and credit cards, which are looked at different and lesser than a mortgage. Mortgages are considered higher tier debt, if you will. Yeah.
So to get a renter with 720, it's a stretch. It's going to be tough. So you're going to be denying a ton. Now, that's not to say you couldn't ask for a little bit higher or maybe create a range there. 720 is high.
720 is real high.
Yeah, you're going
to be sitting vacant for a while waiting for the right candidate to come.
Yeah.
But if you're okay with that, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you're okay with I want to have a top tier tenant in this property and you're setting top tier tenant criteria, that's fine. Just understand that you may have a wait to get that tenant. And we always tell our clients when we're doing tenant placement, we always tell our clients, I'm not going to place any tenant. I'm going to wait until I have the tenant that meets my criteria. And if it means that we have to leave your place vacant for an extra month, I'm going to do it. Because the cost of lost rents, the cost of damages, the cost of the eviction, the cost of the set out, and all of the lost time in between, I would much rather let it sit vacant for 30 days than have it tied up for my most recent eviction. We started in March and the set out is tomorrow.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah, you're speaking my language. We talk about this all the time. The cost of a vacancy is far less than the cost of eviction.
absolutely, absolutely.
You
I
can't,
know it doesn't feel like it.
No,
It hurts when you're sitting there and you don't have that revenue coming through the doors. But trust me when I tell you, the alternative is way, way,
yes,
way worse.
and we see so many landlords fall into this trap where the last few days of the month,
Mm-hmm.
and we're always the busiest the last few days of the month,
Yep.
obviously running screening reports.
Mm-hmm.
But you get this sense from some of the clients of this panic that sets in.
Yeah.
Of
My mortgage is coming due.
Yep, and I get it.
Yeah.
It's 2 days to the first. I don't have any great leads. I gotta fill this place, and that's where you start making foolish mistakes.
Right.
And start bending policy. And
Don't just accept a tenant for
No,
the sake of accepting a
don't
tenant.
do it.
It's not worth it
Yep.
ever.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Last thing I'll say on credit, Jennifer. There is a big difference between Credit Karma.
Oh yeah.
Any of these free credit places around. So if a tenant comes to you, and who knows, listen, Credit Karma is not taken serious enough in my industry for me to know what's going on there. Maybe on credit, it wouldn't shock me if on Credit Karma they said everyone gets an automatic 620.
So I have through my Capital One rewards card, I think Credit Karma or whatever. It's one of the agencies that just checks you can check it as often as you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it pulls from, I want to say, Experian, but it doesn't use the same FICO scoring that you use. It uses some proprietary
Correct.
blend that they have, which
Yes.
I think is where you were going with this.
Yes.
But like, I had a tri-merge run recently and found out that there was a 25-point discrepancy between what Capital One said and what the bureaus actually said.
We've seen, if you talk to our screeners, it is not uncommon to see a 50-point discrepancy.
It was actually a 50-point. I was trying to make it sound lesser than it was. It was a 50-point discrepancy. And it was huge. Like, because at the time I was working on getting some financing lined up for a project that we were doing. And it changed what I was doing with my financing a little bit because I was under the impression that my scores were much closer to 800 and found out that they were, not. They were more in the mid 7s. So it was not the end of the world by any means. Like, we still got the project done, but if you're at a 725 and you find out that no, you're actually a 675, 700 is that magic number for a lot of banks.
Yep. And I was just going to say, think about your own screening criteria. If a tenant applies and you're transparent and you say, listen, you have to have a credit score minimum of 600, and they go, perfect, I got 625. I just ran it through Credit Karma.
Mm-hmm.
And then we run it, and we're using FICO, which is the industry standard, the trusted standard, and it comes back at 575.
Right.
Now they don't meet. Now they're upset. So we deal with a lot of that.
I believe it.
And educate people on the difference between these subprime or soft credit or whatever, alternative credit. There's all kinds of names for it. Not necessarily subprime, but they're using alternative data to create scores versus FICO's algorithm.
One thing that I do want to mention, and I think it's going to start becoming more and more common, a lot of the property management softwares are now offering the ability for landlords to report positive rental data into the databases. If you're a landlord and you get an opportunity to do that, please do it. Please, please, please.
You're gonna hate
Rising tides raise all ships. I think that you're on a different page than I am.
You're gonna hate when I tell you this.
Rising tides raise all ships, and I think that having accurate rental data, is important to help tenants make that next step to home ownership or whatever the case may be.
Did you know that some of those products on platforms, which I don't want to mention by names, but they only report positive rent payments, not negative.
I am aware of that because there's another software portfolio or package that I'm a little bit more familiar with. That is pretty similar in how they report their data, and we know that particular company's had issues in the past. So
yes, so I'm glad that you brought that up. The credit bureaus did mention that is a fix they're working on in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get, because I've been saying this for years too, like, would it be awesome? And I've seen businesses back in the day that came out and they ended up getting shut down because it was considered tenant blacklisting. They were trying to create their own scoring system and gather.
There was one in Buffalo for a while. I think it's long gone now because the blacklisting laws are in effect. But there was a separate agency that you could contact in Buffalo. It was run by an attorney, and he would go and do the eviction record searches for you, like right at the court level and stuff like that. And it's long gone now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So the bureaus do recognize that. All right, if you get you have to hit some sort of like critical mass number to be able to say, okay, now this is actually useful information. Because as you know, like if you run 100 credit reports, how many of them are going to actually have rental data on them?
Yeah.
Positive or negative.
Sure.
But, one.
I've never seen. I've not yet seen it on any data on any report that I've run.
It's super rare. So the more buy-in you can get, the better.
Mm-hmm.
The bureaus recognize that it should be used as a tool both ways, right? Because that creates a powerful deterrent, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Don't pay your rent; it's going to hurt your credit now too.
Right.
All right. So then you've got bills like in California, 1157B, which is super weak. It's a weak bill right now that says landlords have to offer or at least make tenants aware that they can report rent payments to credit bureaus. But that bill got watered down and diluted from the requirement that landlords and property managers must report credit payments to the bureaus. Which means we're not far away from that eventually becoming law. And there's been talk about it at the federal level. So I wouldn't be surprised that in the next couple of years that is going to be a huge change in our industry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if you have to report it. And so now rent becomes a trade line, which could have pretty huge implications.
Could be major. Could be major.
Yeah. Some people in my industry also think like the sky is falling because the government has been talking for years about a centralized credit bureau that's government ran, and so they're thinking like they're going to try to attach this to it or whatever. I don't know, but I see it as a positive thing. Reporting rent payments, good or bad.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. Positive or negative.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to report all rent payments because I think that it also helps to give you a more complete. Listen, we don't trust landlord references as far as we can throw them nowadays. Like my office doesn't do landlord references anymore. We require the tenant to prove to us that they have 12 months of on-time rent payments.
Yeah.
Rent ledger, canceled rent checks, whatever the case may be. So like landlord references are, in my eyes, functionally useless in 2022 and 2023 because it's a lot of objective data that you can't do any verification on. So we've stopped using them.
Yeah. You're checking a box. Some landlords still want to check the box. But you're right. It is
If I could pull that same data from a credit report, though, and have it at my fingertips and know that it's accurate, that would be huge.
I agree.
That would be huge.
Yeah, you could see your whole payment history.
Yeah.
And that I agree. That's it's missing, and adding that back could be big.
I think utilities should be in there too, to be honest with you. Gas, electric, water, cell phone, internet. I think all of that stuff should, if you're going to have a centralized record, if you will, whether it be, the three agencies or whatever, but if you're going to have a record of all of your transaction history, leaving out major monthly expenses doesn't make sense to me. I absolutely think that utilities and rent should be on there for sure. Cars are on there. Mortgages are on there.
Yep.
We shouldn't be leaving behind an entire half the population, if not more.
Yes.
Simply because of something silly like this.
I agree.
I think it's more possible now than ever, though, because the technology's gotten so much better over the years. Trying to pull this off in, I don't know when credit first originated, but trying to pull this off in the years before automated computer systems and things like that would be impossible. Nowadays, I think that we're in a lot better position to make this go.
I think 1972.
Wow.
Pretty sure. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure the Fair Credit Reporting Act was adopted in 1972, so that sounds right. So, last question, and you may or may not know this. You probably already do. I feel like you know all these little tips and tricks and hacks. So, probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but it's kind of a lengthy question from Sherry. So I understand what the issue here is. So Sherry says, and I'll fill it in with some detail, but her original question is, what do you do when the post office has lost your certified letter that you sent to a tenant? They claim they can't track it down. The envelope must have gotten ripped up in the sorting machine, or the address was unreadable. Do I have to start all over and send out another certified letter to the tenant? And her concern is specifically, this was for a security deposit, return receipt. And if you're in a place like New York, the clock is ticking.
It is.
And man, this is not great to run into if you're a landlord.
Well, so we don't send our security receipts certified in New York, or at least I don't. To the best of my knowledge, there's no law that says that you have to send it certified in New York, so we don't. And if anybody knows of a law, and I could be wrong, hey, we're not attorneys and we're not accountants. We forgot to mention that at the start of the show.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk to your professional team that knows your actual situation in and out before making any moves. But in a situation like this, though, like, number one, yes, automatically resend that notice so that even if you do have to restart, you get the clock rolling right away. Like, don't delay on that while you're waiting to sort the rest of this mess out. So I would say, yeah, go ahead and reissue it or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And communicate with the outgoing tenant. Like, it doesn't sound like this was necessarily a sour relationship.
Yeah.
If you call the tenant and say, listen, the post office, destroyed this envelope. It had your check and your deposit disposition in it.
Yeah.
I have to resend it to you. If they're a reasonable person, they're not going to be terribly upset. If you're 30 days after tenancy and you were supposed to return it within 14 days, so you're already outside of the law and you still haven't returned it and you haven't been communicating, then they're probably going to be a little bit more upset. But much like anything else, communication is key.
Yes, and I would say to your favor, Sherry, good on you for sending it certified because you now have a receipt.
You have a receipt.
Showing that you did hit I'm assuming you hit the deadline.
Right.
In Florida, it's 15 days. So you hit the deadline, and if it ever comes back, so again, like, have a conversation. Hey, they lost it with the tenant. If the tenant doesn't accept that and tries to bring a lawsuit against you or take it to landlord-tenant court, you show up with that receipt. Like, hey, listen, I did all the right things. I did what I could. I can't control the post office. Here's my certified receipt.
So the one thing we do in our office is we actually physically mail the disposition letter separate from the check, because we actually cut the checks right on our bank's website and they get mailed right to the tenant. So I can always log into the bank and say, well, I cut a check on this day for this amount, print that out and say, this is, this is where we're at. So we do have that, even though we don't send certified.
Yes. So the last part of Sherry's question is the little nugget of gold that I have that I'm curious if you knew this or not.
Okay.
It's sort of a post office hack. So she said another issue she runs into is she'll send a tenant something and it gets returned as, undeliverable or attempted. She wants to know what she can do about that. And my suggestion would be a little known fact that if you write somewhere between the stamp and the address service requested. Which means instead of the post office sending it back telling you, hey, we can't deliver it, they will actually look in their system and find the new address and give you
forward it.
Not only forward it, but then
they give you the old address.
Yes, they give you a little card. It's a green card. If I'm not mistaken, it's not free. I think it's 50 cents or
something like that.
70 cents, something like that. They will mail you this little postcard that has the new address on it.
And the nice that's address service requested. There's also return service requested, which I think return service is free, and they return the envelope back to you with the card.
Oh.
Go on USPS website. There's more information there. There's also, we talked about it in a podcast episode. I did know this actually.
Yeah. Of course you did.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
I might have actually learned it from you back in the day, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have covered that on, I don't remember what podcast, but if you go on the RentPrep website and search for USPS return address requested, I guarantee you it'll pop up, because there's a transcript from every podcast on the website. And that's those specific words, return address requested, are spoken.
Yeah.
So if you search for that term on the RentPrep website, you will eventually find that podcast if you want to go listen to it.
Yeah, so if you have a tenant that maybe abandoned the property, and you know that if you send them a letter addressed to your property that you know that they're abandoned,
right,
that is a way that basically you get the post office to do a little digging for you.
Yeah.
Assuming that they have, enough time has passed and they're not couch surfing and maybe
assuming they actually put a change of address form in too, because a lot of times people will move and just not put the paperwork in because they don't want to be found.
True.
You used to work in collections. I still work in property management. We don't use this trick anymore, obviously, but one of our favorite tricks back in the day used to be if somebody like abandoned an apartment or something like that, or we were trying to find somebody, because I worked in collections before I got into property management. If we were trying to track somebody down, we would call the pizza place that was nearby to their house, and a lot of times they would update their address with the pizza place.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's pretty genius.
I know. I learned that on. I think I picked that trick up on LPA a lot of years ago.
Wow,
Don't use that. That's not legal. Don't do that. It's certainly not legal anymore. It probably wasn't real legal back in the day, but
right.
it was you know
blurring a line.
Blurring a line. Yeah. I only did that in an industry that I'm no longer operating in. But honestly, we haven't had a need to do that in so long because the technology's gotten so much better.
Right.
But yeah, there used to be a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pizza places or video rental places. That was another popular one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's used to be easier to track people down back in the day.
Right. Yeah. Now, well, also back in the day, people a lot of times had landlines.
Yeah.
And so when you left, you lost that number and they were unreachable.
Right.
Now your cell phone goes everywhere
with you.
Doesn't really matter where you live.
But there's no database for cell phones, really.
That's what they want you to believe, man. But how many spam calls do you get every day?
A lot.
Yeah. So.
A lot.
Yeah. I know we're supposed to end. I just want to share this with everyone because it's appalling and it destroyed me to learn this. So we work in the data industry and getting all these calls for vehicle warranties, and it just drove me crazy. Like, how do they get my information? And sometimes, how do they even know what vehicle I have? Do you want to know where they get the information from? Legally?
Where?
The New York State DMV.
Are you serious?
Sells. Yes. In most states, the DMV can legally sell your information to a third party, and they do.
Wow.
And that is where so if you ever get a vehicle warranty call, you are in a state, and I think there's 38 if I'm not mistaken when we looked into it, 38 states that the DMV sells your information.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was so upset about that.
Well, and to take it a step further, take it outside the collections industry to the repo industry. That data can be used to, number one, help locate where a vehicle might be. But the other thing that they're doing now is they have companies that literally just drive around all day. Like the trucks that drive around here, they have the advertisements, the changing banners on the side of them and stuff. You throw a couple plate readers on that, it drives around town. You throw a plate reader on a tow truck that's out driving around doing work. It goes through a mall parking lot and logs all the plates that are there.
Are you ready?
If you think about how much data gets collected on a daily basis that you have no idea about, and we're like way outside of the topic of what we're.
I know. But
I have a feeling that if you're in this industry, I have a feeling you might be interested in this because it's relevant. You know.
I'm about to ruin your day.
Please.
Not only are you 100% correct, tow trucks have a camera system that takes the snapshot of the license plate, and it pings a central database that the banks use to say if something needs to be repossessed. All that data goes somewhere. We have access to it.
Really?
If I looked you up right now,
and
I could do it a multitude of different ways.
Right.
I could look it up by your SOCH. I could look by your name and date of birth. I could look by your name and the street you live on and piece all the rest of the information together. Or I can just plug your license plate in.
Right.
And there will be hundreds, not a few, hundreds of photos of you driving around.
That's disgusting. I'm terrified of this.
And not only that, it actually geolocates and puts
I believe
a
it.
pin on Google Maps.
I believe it.
Where that picture was taken, when. Private investigators use this often. To be able to pinpoint or say when somebody was somewhere at a certain point in time.
Well, and it used to be that they would only have like Easy Pass data to look at. But it's gotten so much more in depth nowadays. It really has.
Yeah, it is shocking. That was one of the coolest party tricks that we used to do when we would go to the Real Estate Investor Association.
Oh yeah.
And be like, all right, who wants to play? And we'd have like a VPN into our system, and like, all right, come on up here. If you know your license plate number, punch it in, so everyone doesn't see. They punch it in, and we pull up 100 pictures, and again, you could see them like driving with their arm out the window in the summertime.
That's me, man. Arm out the window all summer long.
Yeah, like holy cow. So yeah, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
That all that data, and who knows how, what else.
Who knows what kind of data is out there that we don't know about, really.
Right. But
yeah.
RentPrep is on your side. We're using the data.
We're using the data responsibly.
We're using responsibly and to protect landlords.
Yeah.
But that is part of what we're doing is we're digging into the data. We're not going to run people's license plate for tenant screening, but but you can.
But you could,
and it's shocking.
Yeah, it's I can remember. I mean, it's been 15 years since I've worked in the collections industry, and I can remember being shocked at how much data we had access to even back then, and it's only gotten more and more since.
Yep.
So
it is crazy.
Yeah. On that note, everybody, we are at about an hour and 10 here. Thank you for tuning in. We do appreciate it. If you're in need of tenant screening services, obviously we're sitting in a little conference room here. Right outside here is an entire room full of screeners, and every request that you guys send through the RentPrep website does get touched in person by one of these screeners. I'm pretty sure that's accurate, correct? Before I stick my foot in my mouth?
That is correct, unless it's a shareable credit report. We can't alter a credit report, so that we don't touch. But everything else we do.
But pretty much everything gets touched by a live human being. Credit and background checks both, so that background checks come back as accurate as possible and things of that nature. So if you're in need of credit check and background check services, head on over to rentprep.com. There's a ton of options over there. Steve, any final words? Anything to wrap up with?
I'd say a plug for Andrew Schultz. If you're in the Buffalo area and you are considering hiring a property manager, you will not find one better than Andrew, who will take care of you and give, as we talked about in the beginning, give you all the proper documentation and forms that you need to run your business headache-free and stress-free, and try it with one of your properties. See if you like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming from a client. Steve is a client of mine. It's been a few years, I think, that we've been managing that property for you, and for the most part, it's been pretty smooth.
4 years?
Has it been that long?
Yeah, 2018, I think it was.
We're getting older, man.
Yeah, we are. We really are. But it has run smooth, and again, there's no shame in it. At first I thought, man, I'm in this industry, I can't, we service self-managed landlords, but again, there's a lot of times we see landlords that we say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be on the management side of things.
Yeah.
Maybe you're great at finding deals. I don't know. Not everybody's built to be able to handle tenants. God knows, I don't know what the hell you're made of, but it's not human to be able to deal with some of the ridiculousness that I've heard.
Well, and even we have I have over my monitor at work, I literally have a piece of paper that says we manage people, not properties. And a lot of times people forget that at the end of every real estate transaction, I think I've said this on the podcast, the end of every real estate transaction, at the end of every deal sheet, at the end of every analysis, at the end of every rental application, there's a live human being.
Yep.
And as a landlord, you have a lot of say over, do you get the apartment? Do you not? Am I evicting you? Am I not? People forget that there are actual human beings at the end of every real estate transaction. And I think that it's important for us to, and that's a good note to wrap up on too. Yeah. It's important to remember that. So when you are doing your tenant screening, yes, you are looking at someone, and yes, you are trying to protect your asset, but yes, you do have to remember that there is another human at the other side of that, and you need to be a human to them.
Yes. Agreed.
So,
good advice.
With all that said, let's go ahead and wrap things up here.
Yeah.
If you are looking for that tenant screening service, head on over to rentprep.com. You can also call the office at 1-888-877-8501.
Dang, man.
Is that right?
That is correct. You were
pretty sure I had that down. I actually call the RentPrep offices a fair amount because of my own reports. So I talk to the screeners all the time. You guys can, if you have a report done and you have questions, talk to these people. Talk to Katie and Lauren and everybody else out there in the bullpen, and for sure. And then if you are looking for management services and you are here in the Western New York region, head on over to ownbuffalo.com and check us out. We'll be back next month with our December AMA. We'll get the date posted on that for you as soon as we have it. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.
See ya. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.